I am on with Aquilina Soriano Versoza. I'm so happy to have you on, Aki. I would love if you took a moment to introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, it's great to be here with you, Kristina.
Thank
Um,
you.
so I'm Aquilina Soriano Versoza, but everyone calls me Aki. I'm the executive director of the Filipino Workers Center. We're a worker center that was formed in 1997, and I was one of the founders. I actually was a child actress, and that's what I thought I was going to do
I did not know that.
when
That's
I was
really
younger.
cool. Okay.
And yeah, in Hollywood. But when I went to UCLA, that's when I got to realize that there were different issues in the world happening. And my connection was a lot around racism and suddenly understanding a lot of different things that happened in my life, as well as the context that my parents were also
Mm-hmm.
living in. So I started getting involved in a lot of different issues, from police abuse to environmental racism to the worker issues at the
Mm-hmm.
border, maquiladoras, and just started getting out there and getting experience and kind of immersing myself. And then I ended up going to the Philippines for a year. And I'd never been to the Philippines. I got involved in the National Democratic Movement and with students who are organizing on campus, got to talk to workers striking, at the Century Tuna factory.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
also went out to the countryside where I also learned how to plant rice and learn the issues of the farmers and then overseas workers, because a large percentage of the population is actually working abroad in the Philippines. Labor is one of the biggest exports. I came back here in 1997, and that's when we started Filipino Workers Center. Brought all of that experience back with me, learning and understanding more the context of immigrant workers from the Philippines here. But we just started, there wasn't really a lot of organizations organizing workers who are working in low wage industries in the Filipino. We started immersing with Filipino restaurants and Filipino grocery stores.
Okay.
From there, we started meeting there's a lot of Filipino parties that we went to. We started
Mhm.
meeting a lot of folks and quickly realized that there's like a huge amount of Filipino home care workers.
How do you go about organizing workers that are not in one central place, that are probably pretty hard to find because they're in people's homes?
Absolutely. Those have been all the challenges that we faced. In addition, a lot of them have immigration issues, so they're not necessarily wanting to be found
Yeah.
sometimes. That's why with worker centers and with PWC, it's like multiple strategies together. We don't have like one central place to go to, one employment site, like you said, to find all the workers.
Mm.
Instead, what we do is we create different programs that also bring them to us. So integrating more services that are really critical to their specific situation helps us actually build connections to a lot of workers. How we started was actually after we did these Filipino parties, like part of just like immersing with the workers and the
Mhm.
community, we identified that there were apartment buildings that were like 90 to 100% Filipino workers, and
Mm.
usually
Mhm.
multiple people, crowded living conditions.
Yeah.
What we did is we first went around and did surveys, but we couldn't just knock on people's doors and have them welcome us. What
Right.
we did was actually food distribution on a regular basis so that we could establish ourselves, like they get to
Yeah.
know us. And so when we knocked on the doors after doing food distribution on a consistent basis, then people like we're like, oh, we're from PWC, the ones who bring the food, and they're like, oh, well, come
Got
in,
it. You've
sit
established trust
down.
with them. Right. I love
That's
that.
right. That's
Love
right.
that.
And that's how we started. But
Mhm.
then having a lot of in-depth talks with folks, finding so many home care workers working in individual homes, then we got to know more about like what were their top issues and concerns. Immigration is definitely one of them. Access to health care, jobs also,
Right.
and a lot of problems around working conditions. So we started to create programs that met those kind of urgent needs that they had, so that we started working with some folks, and then it was easy to actually build a culture saying, reach out to more people, bring them into PWC. As we're engaging them with services, it's not just about service, right? It's
Yeah,
service in service of organizing.
that's right.
That
While
we
you're talking, I'm like, service to organizing. Like, that's so brilliant. Okay.
So then we're able to build a base where we build trust, build relationships, and start inviting them to join meetings, because it's also then about having them start to connect what's happening to them and some
Mhm,
of their urgent issues that they're facing to these bigger issues, right?
mhm,
And seeing
mhm.
how it's important for them to get involved in advocacy,
Mhm,
how it's important for them to be a part of building a really big, strong base too.
yeah.
And it was even about recognizing the dignity of the work that they were doing. So that's been a big transformation. This didn't happen overnight.
Mm.
That basic building of like the core of our base took years to do.
How long did it take to get to a place where you were like, okay, I think we've established ourselves here?
Well, 2001 is when we started our official dues paying membership.
Mhm,
We believe in dues and members owning our organization also, even
mhm.
though because of their working conditions, we aren't able to bring in dues the size that unions do, but it's like a start to having them really investing the organization, having ownership,
Ownership,
and
right.
being engaged in terms of their leadership in the organization as well, and seeing their own agency.
That's so great. So much of what you're saying, a lot of organizing union members, you keep them invested in their organization through service, through providing services that they're not getting anywhere else.
Exactly. And it's also like,
Mhm.
how is your organization relevant on an ongoing basis to our base, and not just in times of big campaigns, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
crisis. That's much easier for people to like see right away.
Yes,
But
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
also about, we've been trying to figure out in terms of services, how you actually deliver the services is really important as well, because you don't want to create this kind of charity model where
Mhm,
people
mhm.
are where
Yeah, we're
people are
coming in and we're
receiving
giving.
stuff, and
Yeah,
it's like
right.
how through the process people are engaged as well. And so we've definitely been really leaning into mutual aid, where people are seeing we all have needs at different times, but it's all of us pitching in together that's going
Mhm,
to make it happen. So like
mhm.
creating those opportunities for members to not only receive services, but ways that they can be like concretely involved.
I feel like that model needs to just be replicated everywhere when it comes to workers who are not organized and who are hard to organize for that
Yeah.
same reason. Did you get grant funding during this time?
Yeah, so a majority of our funding has come from private philanthropy first. And then as we've been growing, we've been able to grow our membership dues. We have a goal of trying to build that as a really good, solid piece of our income, but that's still a work in progress.
Yeah. This is the element that a lot of us, when we start being advocates, we don't think about, right? Like, oh, we need a building. We need a place to congregate. We need phones so we can call people. So tell me about the connection with the National Domestic Worker Coalition, which has gotten a lot of media attention in the last couple of years for their work around the care economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, PwC, didn't realize that we were organizing domestic workers. We were like, they're home care workers or caregivers. And
Yeah.
as we started talking to other worker centers who were organizing nannies and house cleaners, it's the same problems. Like, oh,
Yeah.
we are domestic workers actually. So in 2005, 2006, that's when both the California Domestic Worker Coalition and the National Domestic Workers Alliance started coming together. And here in California, we had this opportunity with Cindy, is it Montoya? She's an assemblywoman here in San Fernando Valley, who
Mhm.
her mom was a domestic worker, and she really wanted to do something. Shirla had been working with them. So it was an opportunity to actually jump into legislative work. I think Cheerla was the only group that had any experience in
Mm.
that At the
Mhm.
time, all of
Mhm.
our other organizations were pretty small and hadn't had that experience. And that actually catalyzed the formation of the coalition here
Mm.
in California. We hopped in Sheila's van together with folks from Idapska and drove up to San Francisco. I had a 1-year-old at the time who
Oh
came
my
along for the
goodness.
trip,
My goodness.
and it was just using whatever resources we had. We didn't have grants or funding specifically to do this, but we
Yeah.
saw the opportunity, to actually lift visibility. And so as we came together with Mujeres Unidas y Activas, La Colectiva, all the groups up in the Bay Area, that was the founding of the coalition.
Mm.
And as we did that legislative campaign, we realized like domestic workers have no visibility with legislators
Yeah.
practically. It was like,
Yeah.
domestic workers, do you mean domestic violence? We're like, no, we're talking about nannies, house
Yeah,
cleaners,
yeah,
and
yeah.
home care workers. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, like it just was totally outside their knowledge. So a lot of it was about like we had to figure out, okay, what is our goal here? We're not sure if we're going to win this, but we do have a
Mhm.
champion. So our goals really became around one, how do we just start to lift visibility and start to build some knowledge of what's actually happening
Right.
behind closed doors?
Right.
And at the same time, how are we building leadership? How are we building our members? How are we engaging our members to be a part of this and learn what it takes to
Mhm.
actually win changes to the laws? So it was a whole learning experience for us. And we got all the way to the governor's desk, and that was Governor Schwarzenegger back then,
Mm.
of
Oh,
course.
he must have loved that, I'm sure.
So veto,
Yeah.
of course.
Right.
And so we basically like realized, okay, the political context is not there for us to
Mhm.
actually be able to win. We
Mhm.
also learned that we needed to build a bigger coalition of folks, other stakeholders, individuals with disabilities, and senior groups that, around home care. That's where we found the
Yeah.
biggest pushback,
Yeah.
right? We saw a lot of the need to shift the work from being seen as servants to being seen
Mm.
as workers.
Mm.
Some of the very early narrative shift that needed to happen, not only here in California, but as the national alliance also got built.
Mhm. And your coalition includes employer organizations as well, right?
Now it does, yes. We have hand in hand the domestic employers organization, and there are other disability rights organizations that are
Mhm.
very much central to the coalition as well.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's alliance building. That's partnership that is necessary to make anything happen, right? No one group can do it by themselves. It has to be done in coalition, right?
That's right. And so it didn't happen overnight
Mm.
also. So then we had to do a lot of intentional relationship building.
The model that you've built in California and nationally is outstanding for how to unite different stakeholders around a vision and a goal that uplifts everyone, and keeping that going without your usual implosions and all sorts of things that tend to happen to coalitions. And what a testament to how hard this work is, changing narratives. You've got so many groups now involved, and it's still like pushing a rock up a mountain. The work just never stops.
The strength of our coalition is also based on the strength of all the organizations and the work that they're doing, that we're all doing with workers themselves, because our models are really embedded in terms of building leadership of the workers, like, and bringing them into the organization as
Mm.
well. Also, then they start to understand the complexities of the legislative process, like
Mhm.
how you can't ever win 100% of what you want,
Right,
so
right.
it's been like a whole process of understanding when it's strategic to compromise, when it's not. And also the first bill that went to Governor Schwarzenegger's
Mhm.
office actually excluded home care workers because there was so much controversy around it, around that workforce specifically.
Okay. Ok.
And at that time, our workers said, well, we'd rather have something one for
Mm.
workers versus at this point, if
Yeah.
it's not possible for us to be
Yeah.
included,
Yeah.
we want to move it forward that way. But then later on, when it was actually Amiano's bill,
Mm-hmm.
and we were moving it then, we had a discussion as a coalition, and our members said, if it has to be that way, we would rather us win as a coalition versus not. But then the other organization said, no, at this point, we're strong enough, that's not acceptable. And the other group said, we're not going to support this unless it includes all of us. That was like the kind of
Yeah.
solidarity
Oh,
and
that's
strength
so
that we
brilliant.
felt. That was really beautiful to see.
And growth and political sophistication to know. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Exactly.
awesome. So what's the relationship between the California coalition and the national one at this point?
A lot of the groups in California were really foundational anchor groups of the National Alliance. And so the National Alliance began to grow. And at the beginning, PWC wasn't actually super engaged in the leadership. We were definitely active part, but we were just at a certain point where we were still trying to build a solid enough foundation of our own
Mhm.
organized base and our own organization. So it took us a couple of years before we were able to really then engage with the national. But there's other groups who were able to do that, and see then that the National Alliance could really complement and help the growth of all of the organizations. So from the very beginning, it wasn't seen as just a policy
Yeah.
hub, also in terms of moving campaigns that way, but it was seen like, how can this national formation really support the member organizations to grow and strengthen, and in terms of all of the things we're doing, base building, campaigns,
Mm.
policy enforcement,
Mhm.
all of that. And so one was resources. And, iGen is an amazing fundraiser and national funding that our individual organizations would never be able to attract.
Wow, that's key. Yeah.
NDWA was able to secure those.
Mm.
Then it was like a balance of like, one, being able to know that we do need to get funds to the member organizations, but also not starve the National Alliance itself.
Yeah.
We also needed
Yeah.
the resources to build that out. It plays a key role in terms of communications and media.
Mhm.
So where most of our organizations did not have like our own comm staff and stuff like that,
Mhm.
NDWA was able to then come in and support
Wow.
and then lift visibility what's happening on the local level by
Wow.
bringing in the comm staff of the alliance, and create opportunities for building relationships with funders. We also built a cohort of directors, cohort of members, cohort organizers, where we're all sharing what we're doing. So instead of just growing and experimenting in silos, then we're able to share. There's so many times that, like, after talking with other organizations, like, yes, that makes so much sense.
To be clear, you're talking about from other states, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. Well, from this state and from other states too, and just thinking
Yeah.
about what they're doing, how they're thinking about doing it, the different experiences. It just like that sharing of the knowledge, both in terms of strategy, what folks are doing, but also just the nuts and bolts of like, what is your pay scale? How are you dealing with HR issues?
Yeah. Yeah.
We've supported each other in so many different ways. And the National Alliance has also created a space where we can think strategically together, where we can like come together, take a step back,
Mm.
get a larger view, where they bring together the larger context of the national and what's
Mm.
happening at the different locals, so
Mhm.
that then we can think about movement strategies too, like
Right.
overall about what we're doing. What is our role in terms of like preserving our democracy? What is our role?
Voting rights, all that stuff, right?
All of that.
I know the
It's
coalition
just,
played a role in Georgia in the Senate elections
Oh,
there.
absolutely.
What an example of how to scale mobilizing and worker organizing to really just find each other and build each other up together. It's just brilliant. I just
Yeah.
have so much respect for the coalition. especially you all in California, because I've worked with you and it means so much to me.
That's not perfect. There's always,
Of
conflicts
course.
that will come up,
Of course. Yeah.
but it's one of the most healthiest coalitions that I've been in, where there's overall just real genuine
Hmm.
solidarity with each other. And
Hmm.
it's also, I think, the leadership that really came together to start it really modeled that, and
Yeah.
trying to have real generosity of spirit, and
Mm.
where we see each other's
Yeah.
success really tied up in with each other. And
Hmm.
so having that kind of attitude, I think, has been really critical
I'm really
for
glad you
staying
said
competitive.
that. I'm glad you said that because we should be clear that none of this is easy and we're
No.
humans and we get into sticky situations and disagreements, and that's normal. And it's about being okay that there's conflict and recognizing out of conflict comes progress. What is it? A crisis is opportunity. And so we will embrace it. And as long as we all are genuine about reaching the same goal, we are okay with it as hard as it is.
Mhm.
Then the next level, which I think you guys are at now, is the development of the C4 and the further sophistication of your political work, which to me
Yes.
is like gold standard. This is where we need everybody to get to. And I'd love to hear where you guys are with that.
hmm When we first started PWC, it was like the furthest thing from our minds,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but as we progressed, one was we weren't doing policy work first. We were on the ground organizing just with workers at work sites, and then it's like we really need to do some policy work because this policy is messed up and getting in the way of us actually making changes on the ground. So then we
Mhm.
got involved in policy work, you know, uh, overtime for home care workers and nannies, and then it's like, you know what? It really matters, like who's governing. So we saw the need and saw other worker centers also evolving in terms of doing C4 electoral work. First, we developed our C3 Filipino Voter Empowerment Project,
Mm.
where we started to get experience of building a field campaigns, phone banking, doing work around specific ballot initiatives, and at the same time, really seeing it as a leadership development
Mhm.
project, as well as building our political power and governing power, because it also gave a chance for workers to even get outside of their industry and thinking just workers' rights, because then
Mhm.
there's like start to really make these connections around all of these different issues to their lives, and then
Mm.
get a lot of
Mhm.
practice talking to people about it. And then when you talk to legislators and you have like a field program where you're doing
Mhm.
electoral work, they're like, oh really? It's like it means something different.
No, it does. It shows you're serious and you're building and you want power. And that's it. That's how you do it. You build from the ground up. Again, it's like if you're not playing the game, you're getting played, period. And these workers, we need to start playing the game
That's
across the board.
right.
All of these
Yeah.
workers. Yes.
So now it's like, yeah, it's really important. We got to build up the capacity so that we can also do the C4 work, and
Mhm.
especially where we see it as really critically vital, being able to have that kind of voice in the election. And then that's another level of political power and
Mhm.
influence that you're building through C4 work specifically, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it really, like doing legislative work, it really, really makes a difference of who you're talking to, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Who's actually sitting in that position. And
Mhm.
so we've seen how much good can be done by really good legislators.
Champions. Yes, totally.
And how
Absolutely.
much how much bad can happen if there's bad folks
Yeah.
in office.
Yeah.
So that's why we just saw like this is another evolution that we really need to be a part of, that we need to be able to have
Mhm.
this as one of our strategies, one of our tools for actually creating change. NDWA we established our C4 Care and Action, let's see, around, I think we're about 4 years old now, Care and Action. And so
Okay.
it's specifically around helping to support women of color into
Mhm.
office. And so, yeah, so just seeing what we've been able to do with Care and Action.
Absolutely.
So that's the next evolution. We just established Filipino Action Center, last year, the governor recall election was our first real work with that. And then
Congratulations.
this year, we're
Mhm.
establishing more of the infrastructure, and we'll be getting into endorsements and things like that.
Wow.
But so we're figuring all of that out. So it's new to us, but it's pretty exciting.
It's
Yeah, it's
yeah.
exciting
Oh,
to
yeah.
see
You're
what we're
forging a
going to
path.
be
You're
able to
forging a
build.
path, how it's done, showing others how it's done. I'm so impressed with you guys, really. We are running out of time, unfortunately. So do you have any last words of advice or tips, tricks, lessons learned, anything that you would impart on the other advocates listening to the
Mhm.
podcast?
In terms of like advocacy and winning policy, I think it's really this balance. Like, winning does matter. We need to win, but we also need to make sure that our goals are not just about winning the policy, but
Mhm.
how through the campaign and through the wins that we're actually building real leadership, real base, for sustainability and for enforcement of whatever we're passing. It has to be with that lens of overall power building. So it might not always be the easy thing to do, but we need to have that kind of long view if we're
Yeah.
going to make real substantial and systemic changes.
And the process is almost just as important
Yes.
as the end result. Yes.
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 Mhm.
Well,
But of course,
Aki,
we need to win too.
well, that's always important, right? Right. I am so happy you came on and shared your wisdom and your time, and just again, hold you guys in the highest esteem. And I'm thrilled to share the model and the story of PWC, the coalition. All the member orgs are just examples of fierce women leaders, and it's just brilliant, and I love it. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Kristina. It's so great to be a part of this. And I'm just so appreciative to work with great people like you and the whole domestic worker movement. I'm so proud and appreciative and grateful.
Thank you.